Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be going over the T-55AM-1, a premium Tier 6 medium tank that is purchasable in a pack that includes 2000 GE, 15 days of premium time, and of course, the T-55AM-1 itself. I'll go over its stats, how it plays, its strengths and weaknesses, and then I'll go over if I think that this is worth purchasing or not. Please subscribe if you like more content like this, as I appreciate each and every one of you, but either way, let's get into the review. So as always, in order to expedite this video, I'll place the T-55AM-1 stats on the side of the screen here. Key stats to note are its turret traverse, engine power, and armor values, with its notable shells being the 3BM25 APF SDS shell with over 250mm of armor pen at 500 meters and 30 degrees, its 3 BK17M Heat FS with 338mm of armor pen at 500 meters and 30 degrees, and its 9M117 barrel-launched ATGM that again has 520mm of armor pen at those same distances and angles. With that out of the way, let's go over its role and how it plays. And the T-55AM-1 is best described as a mix of old and new school, being a modernized version of a tank that saw its origins in the 1940s. Basically, it functions like a medium tank while also having characteristics of a main battle tank, in that it flanks quite well and can take a hit from the front and survive. It can also destroy most enemies with 1 or 2 hits at most, but it doesn't have the characteristic ERA or composite armor that surrounds the entirety of the vehicle like a normal MBT would, nor does the T-55AM-1 have that MBT speed that we're all used to, although it is certainly very fast for a T-55 and even amongst all similar BR medium tanks. In this way, it allows you to play as a well-armored sniper or brawler. The versatility in the T-55AM-1 is not to be understated, as it has very powerful frontal armor depending on how it gets hit, plus a laser rangefinder making you capable from near and far, with a stabilizer that makes it so that you can fire accurately on the move. Additionally, for those shots where APF SDS will not do, you do have access to the excellent 9M117 ATGM, although personally I strongly prefer the APF SDS due to its projectile speed being nearly 4 times faster than the ATGM and the fact that you don't need to guide it to your target, and well, it has a flat trajectory. This does not mean that the ATGM is not effective, however, as well as the Heat FS if you prefer, as they both indeed are. Ultimately, this only means one thing: you have a great amount of choice in how you want to defeat your enemies, whether you prefer ATGM, Heat FS, APF SDS, or even HE and APCBC ammunition, along with smoke shells for cover. In that way, the T-55AM-1 has something for everyone and every style of play. It can flank, it can tank, it can brawl, and it can snipe. Of course, as you get into up tiers, especially in the 9.0 plus BR match, it may be wise to snipe, as its armor becomes less effective more quickly than its cannon, but that doesn't mean that you can't still be near or on the front lines, as it can still move decently well compared to 9.0 tanks, as well as destroy them with APF SDS shells from close range. In short, the T-55AM-1's role is whatever you'd like it to be, although it does tend to shift into flanking / sniper positions as BRs do increase. Either way, it is extremely capable and remains fairly capable in a total up tier, which is not something that can be said of most tanks. And now for its strengths and weaknesses, and I'll start off with its strengths. First, it has a good, versatile cannon that can fire APF SDS, Heat FS, APCBC, ATGMs, and smoke. It also features a stabilizer. Second, it features additional turret armor which gives it nice Heat FS protection, as well as some protection from traditional and physical rounds like APDS, APF SDS, and APCBC, and well, APHE for that matter. Third, the T-55AM-1 features additional composite frontal hull armor over standard T-55 models in the Russian tech tree, which is very unusual for tanks of this BR. Fourth, it has decent mobility for its BR. This vehicle exists at a BR where tanks, especially American tanks, can struggle with speed, at least outside of their light tanks. In addition to this, it has night vision, which does make it a little bit more up-tierable than other vehicles of its BR. Following this, it sits at a good BR that won't typically face modern tanks, but it can certainly go toe-to-toe with them if you know what you're doing. For its 7th strength, it features a laser rangefinder, which is not all too common at this BR, and finally, it has premium RP and Silver Lion bonuses. And now for its weaknesses. Really, there aren't too many. So first, though the cannon has many options, it is still ultimately a bit outdated and smaller in caliber than other tanks of its BR range, making it so that during long-range engagements, you may not have the penetration that you need with the APF SDS to get through higher BR vehicles. Secondly, it does not have thermals, but this is to be expected at this BR. In a down tier, it will not be a disadvantage if you don't have thermals. Third, poor turret traverse speed, though it is a little bit better than standard T-55 models, so there's that. Fourth, it has cramped crew quarters, which makes crew kills easy against the T-55AM-1. And finally, as with most Russian vehicles, this has poor gun depression, making holddowns a little bit more difficult with the T-55AM-1. Now for my ratings and final recommendations. So ultimately, while the T-55AM-1 is a great vehicle and one that is rightfully feared in its BR bracket, things in War Thunder have progressed substantially since its introduction to the game. For instance, the T-55AM-1 is currently the same price as the T-72AV Terms, which is a higher BR vehicle that will likely help more in the grind at the top of the tech tree, whereas the T-55AM-1 begins to lose its teeth when fighting 9.0 plus BR vehicles, which isn't all too close to where the T-72 Terms sits in regards to its BR. The unfortunate thing is that because these two vehicles are currently the same price, same tier, and are in the Russian ground tech tree, they will always be linked, with the T-55AM-1 being seen as less than, at least typically, even though I would argue that it can do better at its own BR than the Terms can do at its BR. That's the problem though, as the Terms is a more modern tank, so more people are going to be drawn to it. Plus it sits at a higher BR, so people can use it to fight alongside modern tanks like the T-90, T-80, and against Leopard 2s and M1 Abrams, whereas the T-55AM-1 is still fighting against tanks from decades ago. Plus the Terms will help people fill out that top tier lineup that they want so badly, but will never get it if they only played the Terms by itself. Personally, with me being able to say that I own both the Terms and AM1 at this point, I can say that I like the T-55AM-1 much more at 8.3 VR than I do with the Terms at 9.7, with me having much more success with it than I ever did with the Terms. Either way, let's get into my ratings, and I give the T-55AM-1's cannon an 8 out of 10 because of how versatile it is and for the fact that it is probably about as powerful as any 100mm cannon can ever be in War Thunder. Plus, it has a stabilizer, which is not a guarantee at this BR. It gives you your choice of shell type to use, which is a great way for less experienced players to get used to the top tier fighting and for them to see how they want to play. For survivability, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. While this is technically not the highest BR T-55 in-game, it features substantial improvements over lesser T-55s that can help it survive, namely the improved turret armor, of which helps tremendously in hold down situations and against heat FS, the latter of which becomes more prominent in this BR range. It is also one of the lowest BR tanks in-game that features composite armor, which makes the T-55AM-1 surprisingly tough from the front. While it is an aging design, its improvements allow it to cope quite well with the changing battlefield, despite its still mediocre crew size. For maneuverability, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. While it's not the fastest vehicle in game, it is very respectable and has a lesser version of the engine typically used in the larger T-72, and it can still move along the battlefield with good speed and agility, owing largely to its semi-lightweight, good engine power, and decent track size. While it is definitely no light tank, it is still more maneuverable than many American tanks at this BR. Overall, I have to give the AM1 an 8 out of 10, which is a solid score for overall performance, and a 6.5 out of 10 for value in regards to the pack. Comparing unfavorably to the Terms, that I would say is closer to a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 for value, especially when considering the bundle offers where you have the Terms with some sort of aircraft as well. If the T-55AM-1 was even $5 less than what it currently is, but more so $10 USD less, I would say that the AM1 may have a stronger argument in the eyes of most people in favor for it. With the Terms currently existing at 9.7 VR, considering its ability to be up-tiered fairly well, it is a genuine wonder why the T-55AM-1 is still priced how it is outside of the fact that both tanks share the same tier. While the AM-1 is a great tank all its own, it's just not as attractive as the Terms, even though it's the same price and, again in my opinion, a bit better for its BR. In all, however, for a guy like me that has a ton of mid to high 8 BR range vehicles such as the BMD4, Object 279, BMP3M, and others, the T-55AM-1 is actually the perfect complement for my lineup. It will help me build a vicious group of vehicles that can dominate each match, which is what it was originally sold by Gaijin to do. But again, now that BRs have increased, so should the price of the T-55AM-1 decrease. It's a great vehicle, but an anachronism at its price. At $60, as much as it pains me to say, I personally would just purchase the T-72AV Terms first rather than the T-55AM-1. I think that the T-55AM-1 is much better for learning the ropes, as 9.0 plus BR tank gameplay is a nightmare for new players, whereas 8 to 9.0 BR fights are at least a little bit slower and somewhat more similar to what new players might be used to when fighting lower BR tanks, at least when compared to what the Terms does. In the end, the T-55AM-1 is a competent vehicle that can and will do well at its BR, and is a tank that I can recommend purchasing, especially for those less familiar with high-end tank fights, as inexperienced players that buy the Terms are oftentimes just throwing their money away because of how bad they are and how quickly they die each match, whereas the jump isn't quite as bad with the T-55AM-1. Like I said though, I think the T-55AM-1 is better at 8.3 BR than the Terms is at 9.7. It can also be up tier to an extent to play as an emergency vehicle alongside the Terms in a lineup. Either way, thanks again for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content, but until then, I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.